Good afternoon, America. I'm Ann Smollon, and this is Come Together Conversations. There is a movement across America of individuals who are becoming enlightened about human health. People who are sick and tired of feeling sick and tired and wondering how they landed in such bad states of health. Symptoms of eye strain, blurriness of vision, dizziness, loss of hair, chronic neck pain, a low energy dragging feeling, chronic fatigue, pain in the back of the lower head, headache, sleep disruption, feeling exhausted but not able to fall into deep, long sleeps. Underlying nausea, irritability, outbursts of anger, loss of focus, loss of relationships, can't handle the stress of relationships, anxiety, depression, and the list goes on and on. What is going on here, my fellow and female Americans? Obesity and diabetes are rising dramatically, even in people in their 20s and 30s. Cervical cancer, infertility in young women, prostate cancer, breast cancer, major numbers of thyroid diseases in both men and women, people who cannot get rid of Lyme disease parasites and various virus, and the list goes on and on. What must we do to take back our health? This is a tricky question because of the ever-growing technology and dictatorship going on in the world today, many of which were predicted by Aldous Huxley in his book written in 1931, A Brave New World. Set in a futuristic world state whose citizens were environmentally engineered into an intelligence-based social hierarchy, the novel anticipated huge scientific advancements in reproductive technology, psychological manipulation, and classical conditioning. Mr. Huxley spoke of people not being ready for the consequences of loving their slavery. And when speaking of techno-dictators, his interview with Mike Wallace in 1957, he said that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. Today I have Dr. Joshua Rosenthal here. Dr. Rosenthal started as a head and neck surgeon, but made a change over many years ago and now practices as an integrative quantum clinician. In your publications, podcasts, and lectures, you describe revolutionary health protocols that use ancient elements to reverse the health damages caused in large part by use of technology. On your website and in your publications, you use terms such as sleep and regenerative medicine, photobiomodulation, circadian and mitochondrial medicine, head and neck interventional ultrasonography, regenerative therapies, sleep rhythm resync, mindset reset, immune system boosting, hormone balancing, detoxification, seasonal nutrition, epigenetic, and lifestyle engineering. Those are terms which most people are unfamiliar with, Doc. What happened in your life that had you move from head and neck surgery to integrative quantum medicine?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Ann, for having me on. And, you know, besides being a head and neck surgeon, I'm also board certified in sleep medicine. And while both kind of unique fields brought me to the same point, I would lean on the sleep medicine side to describe my awakening to a different way of thinking. The beautiful part of the complexity of sleep medicine as a clinician is it's very cookie cutter. You come in, say, I can't sleep. I say, great, let's get a sleep test. I get to look at the sleep results, and I tell you either you have a diagnosis and here's the treatment, or I say everything's fine. Mm-hmm. And after a decade and thousands of sleep tests, I was searching for what was wrong with the people that clearly came in and said, I can't sleep well. And I said, everything's fine. The sleep test says everything's fine. It's normal.
Right.
You know, and the idea of normal, again, is an idea of disease versus wellness. You know, as a traditionally allopathic trained medical doctor, we diagnose disease. We don't really quantify wellness or the spectrum that declines before disease starts, right? Because before you have diabetes, you have something before diabetes. We now say we have pre-diabetes. Mm-hmm. So before every disease, you have pre-disease, which the signs were starting, or symptoms were starting, or wellness was being lost in some form. And so I knew these people that couldn't sleep had a problem. And were they on a spectrum heading towards diseases like sleep apnea and other sleep pathology? If they did, I felt the need to find it and intervene earlier. Why would we wait until they had a horrific chronic disease that's associated with all kinds of terrible other medical problems? Why wouldn't we intervene sooner? So I would scour these sleep tests, and over time, I made some discoveries. I noticed that the people who couldn't sleep and did not have a diagnosable sleep pathology based on sleep polysomnography, which is the gold standard, I noticed those people had a couple of things going wrong for them. All sleep physicians learn about the stages of sleep, and so we characterized them. And I noticed that some of these people did not have any deep sleep, or very little deep sleep, or they didn't have any dream sleep, or very little dream sleep, or a combination. They didn't have deep or dream sleep proper quantities. And some of those people had what we call fragmented sleep, that they jumped in and out of these stages and never really stayed in the stage of sleep to get the restorative form. And I felt like that was where the missing piece was. And so I did my own due diligence, my own citizen science. I purchased at the time a consumer level, it was like an alarm clock that had a little EEG headband. And I would wear this EEG headband and I could dock it. This is before Bluetooth and all the other craziness. And it would show me the stages of my sleep. And I set out to manipulate the stages of my sleep, hoping that I could garner some information about maybe how to help manipulate the stages in my patients. That maybe if I could improve my deep sleep, then I could improve their deep sleep, and maybe they would feel better. And that brought me through a series of experiments and messing around with different precursors to neurotransmitters and different supplements and herbs, and trying to see what was the effect. And while I can't sit here and say that I discovered the holy grail of how to manipulate sleep on the level that I had set out, I did eventually end up learning from a talk, a neurologist talking in, I believe it was Texas, about vitamin D, sleep, and migraines. And that talk was very profound on me because it reviewed some information about vitamin D that I was not aware of, that it has the construction of a steroid hormone, but yet we talk about it as a vitamin, so that's already a little bit of a discrepancy. It has receptors in our entire body, so also very different from a vitamin. A vitamin usually has a unique purpose. This has receptors in your brain and your liver and every part of your body. And
so that means that in every part of your body, there are these things that are ready for the vitamin D to come in?
Yeah, so vitamin D is an important molecule, hormone, that's communicating information in a biochemical way from the sun. And so this was the first time I thought of vitamin D in that fashion. And this doctor talked about very high dose supplementation of vitamin D. And I said, okay, let's see what happens, because every patient that came in with a lab sheet had very low vitamin D. So I took all these people that couldn't sleep, that I didn't have a diagnosis on polysomnogram, and I said, at least I could try this. So I supplemented their vitamin D. And a small percentage would instantly sleep better.
Wow.
Because the same part of the brain that's responsible for migraine and sleep apnea has vitamin D receptors. And so the idea was that this was somehow enhancing the control of a part of your brain responsible for sleep. And that really got me intrigued about the work I had been doing in my own spare time and my own sleep experiments. And I said, well, wait a second. Vitamin D really represents the sun. And at the same time, I was looking at information relating to circadian rhythms, and then it kind of all clicked. The sun is responsible for setting your circadian rhythm, or the lack thereof the sun. The sun and the lack of the sun is how your body tells time. And vitamin D is a supplement or an indirect measurement of how much you're in the sun. I mean, we all live very indoor lives. And the lack of vitamin D is a reflection of that. What if the information, the solar information, the photonic information, the light, energy, and information that comes from the sun was doing more than just vitamin D and telling our body information to run our physiology better? And that's really exactly what I was looking at the time, epigenetics. You know, the idea that the environment turns these genes on and off. And so at that time, my understanding of the environment was clearly just the outside, but really we didn't live outside. So we lived in an altered environment, this artificial environment. I mean, as we record here in the studio,
Right.
this is not the solar frequency that's shining down on us, and we're making no vitamin D. But yet if we both went outside, instantly our epigenetics would change and we would start to make vitamin D, because the UVB light in the sun that's present right now as we record would be stimulating our skin and changing signals in our cells to make vitamin D.
Can you define epigenetics for our audience?
Sure. So the example I typically give is if I had an Eskimo in the North Pole and I had an Equatorian person living on the equator. Those lifestyles are very different, right? The Eskimo is eating pure fat, like whale blubber, and needs to create heat to survive, otherwise you're going to freeze to death. Now, the Equatorian doesn't have access to that sort of high-fat diet, has vegetables, fruits, has more of a vegetarian diet, maybe some meat. And so you can then ask the question, does diet match your environmental signals, right? Guess what? In the polar ice caps, you don't grow bananas. But yet on the equator, you may grow a banana. And eating a banana in a high latitude area in the winter is a mismatch. The environment has encoded information into that banana.
Right.
And that information won't be seen in the same way in the body that a banana eaten on the equator would be compared to the North Pole, right? So it's physics, unfortunately, and this is where it gets dicey. And then as physicians, we don't learn about physics, but the electrons and the spin, and it's all encoded in that banana. When you look at the banana, you don't see that there's encoded information, but there's a reason that banana can only grow in a high, strong light environment. It needs that information to generate that molecule. And our body, in our gut, and what is our gut? Our gut is the outside on the inside. That's epigenetics, and people don't think of that. And that's really how food becomes part of the epigenetic signal, is when I eat a banana in the winter in New York, I'm telling my gut that I'm in a much different area than I really am.
Wow. That is
Right? So
profound. So hold that thought for one moment. This is Come Together Conversations with me, Ann Smollon, interviewing Dr. Joshua Rosenthal. And we are going to take a brief break and be right back. Don't go away.
Hi, I'm Arthur Lee, founder, CEO, and inventor of LifeVac, a simple rescue device that could save a child's life in a choking emergency. All these people were saved with LifeVac. People may not realize that on average, 14 people a day die from choking-related incidents. Every 5 days, one of those is a child.
As simple as place, push, pull.
To learn more, please visit lifevac.net.
So we're back now with Come Together Conversations with me, Ann Smollon, interviewing Dr. Joshua Rosenthal, MD. And what is the current title that you give yourself? Integrative Circadian Clinician?
So yeah, sleep and, I really practice mitochondrial medicine, sleep, and circadian regenerative medicine. Sleep being the ultimate regeneration that we really have on a daily basis. And so I always start to get that right, because otherwise, everything else is wasted.
Everything else is wrong.
That's right. That's right.
So we left off with this term epigenetics, which is a big term for me and for a lot of people. Can you describe in a kind of common sense way how epigenetics affect us on a daily basis?
Sure. So just to give a little further color to what epigenetics means to our human existence. A lot of us understand this idea of genetics and that we're predestined to have disease X because our dad or mom had it. And, the truth is that's not really true. And the Human Genome Project, we spent millions of dollars, but, where's the treatment that we expected to deliver because of finding out what the human genome was, and you really haven't seen anything. And that's because epigenetics really run the story. The environment turns these genes on and off, and it's only when bad genes are turned on that they become bad actors. A great example is we have these super centenarians, people that lived 100 years, who have the BRCA gene, which is a breast cancer gene. And, many women get this diagnosis and then contemplate mastectomy and removal of their ovaries and uterus because of the risks of female cancers. So then how can someone live 100 years with that gene and not develop breast cancer? Mm-hmm. And it's because genes are really much like a stick of dynamite. You're given them at birth, but you don't have to light them. The environment is the spark. Okay? And so, then you have to start saying, well, how does that work? And that's really where I look to see where I could figure out more details about that. And,
I think that gives a lot of hope for people. And for people who have done genetic testing, it can give them a sense of not false security, but just empowerment over their health to say, okay, what can I do so I don't turn this gene on?
The great news, in my opinion, is that this means you do have control over your health, that regardless of the rough draft of genes that your parents gave you, you can control them and that you don't have to follow in their footsteps. If dad was always a diabetic, you can make changes. Now, what is inherited is how you live, your lifestyle, the choices you make. Sometimes it's cultural, sometimes it's societal. The job, your dad was a teacher, you became a teacher. So then you're under, fluorescent lights all day long because that's the job. And so we do wear our inherited lifestyle factors on us more so than we do the genes. And those are likely the sparks of disease. And so how does that really work? The lifestyle.
The sparks
yes.
to the dynamite?
Exactly. So for instance, getting back to this idea of why do people sleep so poorly? And, I would say over the last 10, 20 years, this meme, this idea that, just have another cup of coffee and I'm a man because I can sleep 5 hours and still, succeed. And that's somehow a desirable trait or successful trait. I think it's a terrible, idea and imprint that we've put on people because it's not healthy. There are very few people that have the genetic ability to actually survive with such little sleep. Mm-hmm. And many people are living their lives thinking they are that person and they may not be, and so then they're setting themselves up.
And so that's a mindset.
100%, and mindset and lifestyle go hand in hand because your beliefs will be acted out by your physical being. If you believe you're bulletproof and can walk around with no sleep and that, that makes you stronger, you'll wear it like a badge and you'll do it repeatedly. Mm-hmm. If you thought that 5 hours of sleep was actually killing you, then you would realize you have to do something different about that.
Yeah.
And so how does nature, how does the environment encode that information into your body? And, people don't understand light. I didn't understand light because it's not something that's taught. But light is much like an old school punch card that, ran a computer. It's like a code. We use codes, when you open an app on your phone, somebody coded that, and it's a series of zeros and ones. Light has information in it.
Wow.
Okay? And so besides having energy, it has information. And so when the sun goes down, your body was designed to be devoid of those signals. The signal that we use to tell time, one of the main cogs of the gears of time in our body, is blue light. We have a receptor in our eyes, in our skin, in our adipose tissue called melanopsin, and that receptor is used along with vitamin A. It's coupled to vitamin A. And when blue light hits it, it activates the vitamin A, changes the configuration of vitamin A, and delivers a message then to the cell. And when the sun goes down, your cell was designed to not have that message keep going over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's pretend now it's 10 o'clock at night and you and I are sitting here having this conversation and we're under these fluorescent lights.
Mm-hmm.
These fluorescent lights are very, very blue heavy.
Blue is bad?
So blue isn't bad, but blue at night, artificial light at night, especially the blue frequency, is sending a false message to your cells. And the other side of this, that people do understand is melatonin. Blue light is one of the greatest suppressors of melatonin. So if the sun goes down and you're designed to start making melatonin, and you sit under fluorescent LED, all kinds of lights and screens, you will
What
never...
about your phone?
100%, that's blue light.
Right.
Blue light
The
heavy.
closer you get to the screen, the worse it is?
So, you can get into these subtleties. The bottom line is the body is trying to decipher the time of day to decide whether you should be putting the glucose in the blood, making fat, burning fat. So it's trying to prepare you for the upcoming winter. If the light, when our photo period, so we're in the summer when we're recording this right now.
Right.
By the fall, what will happen to the length of day? It's going to shrink. It's going to shrink down to the smallest point it can in the winter. And that information is lost when we live in an artificially lit world, because that information is telling our body, hey, you need to run your body differently. And
So using technology actually keeps us indoors.
well,
For me, it does
It tends to
because-
keep us indoors, and it gives us a signal that doesn't exist. And I think, maybe it's helpful to show, we have some slides to show a little bit about light and what light really looks like when you put it on paper. So I just want to, make note that on the left here, you can see I'm going to say volume. I'm going to use a sound analogy. The volume of light we get outside is much greater than the volume of light we get indoors. So when we're indoors, the light, the intensity of light is very, very small compared to the amount of light we get outside. And you can see that in relationship to the height of the colors of light from outdoors to indoors. But then more importantly, when we're indoors, the picture on the right shows that the spectrum of light, with UV being on the left and the red and infrared all the way on the right, you see there's this really wide amount of frequencies of light that are coming from the sun that hit our skin when we stand outside. When we're inside, you see on the lower side, that's a LED light, you see that it's a very narrow spectrum of only the visible frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
And you also see that the shape there, that spike in the red on the bottom there, that spike is actually in the blue area. It doesn't look anything like the rounded, more even distributed light that comes from the sun.
Okay, so even though it's red, it's in the blue part of
So
the
yeah,
spectrum?
so let's go to the next slide. I think this will be a little better because now
The
this is
hidden
color coded.
blue toxin.
So this is color coded for us. So here we can see on the top, we have an LED light bulb, and so now you can see that the colors of the spectrum of light are actually being shown by the graph. So there's a big hump, a big hill, a big mountain of blue light. And if you look at the compact fluorescent, you see spikes of light.
Okay.
If you look at the incandescent, which is what, when I was a child, that's the main light we used, there's really not a lot of blue light. There is a little bit. It was much more heavy on the red side. And if you compare the red side of an incandescent bulb to the red side of an LED or a compact fluorescent, you notice there is none.
Mm-hmm.
So again,
Wow.
when you talk about that kind of code, this is the code that your body is using to tell time. That large spike in your LED screen at night, you can see it shows it has an 80% suppression of melatonin.
Wow.
Now, what people don't realize about melatonin, they just think, oh, it puts you to sleep. It's also probably the number one brain antioxidant. Now think neurodegeneration that's going on in this country. It's also an aromatase inhibitor, which is a fancy word for it lowers estrogen. Okay, and this is why artificial light at night is associated with breast cancer and other cancers, because high estrogen levels stimulate cancer growth.
Oh boy, you think that you're just looking at your phone and becoming relaxed, which ultimately it never does relax me.
Right.
It makes me feel like I just can't get into the sleep zone, but it's more of a distraction.
Correct.
While I'm on one of those games, which I don't watch anymore.
Right, and it's
reading some of your chapters.
Yeah. Well, the worst part is that the blue light is very stimulatory on our sympathetic nervous system. So it stimulates us in the fight or flight. It's very addictive from a standpoint of neurotransmitters. So here we have something that's much like sugar or a drug. It actually is addictive. It prevents you from going to sleep. So watching one more show, that didn't happen when we were kids. That one more show phenomenon is one, because we have endless amounts of streaming, so that we always can have new material, but also because that light is very stimulatory. So it keeps us attached to the service that you're using.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like a drug.
Like a drug.
So we're going to take a quick break and come right back with Dr. Joshua Rosenthal, MD, but also a integrative circadian clinician. This is Come Together Conversations with me, Ann Smollon, and again, we will be right back.
Hi, I'm Michael Astor, a New York personal injury lawyer at Astor Law. I've spent the past 30 years fighting for New Yorkers who have been injured or lost a loved one due to the fault of others. At Astor Law, we help accident victims. We have a track record of success with some of the largest settlements and jury verdicts in America. At my firm, we provide New Yorkers with a free consultation. And if you hire us, you don't pay us until we win money for you. If you or someone you know has been injured in an accident, give us a call. At Astor Law, quality service doesn't cost, it pays.
Welcome back to Come Together Conversations with me, Ann Smollon, interviewing Dr. Joshua Rosenthal. Dr. Rosenthal, we were talking before the break about blue light and it being a toxin. I don't think that most people understand the impact that blue light has on their bodies. Can you talk about the inflammation factor and what that looks like a little bit more? And I mean, a lot of women on Long Island, their ears perked up when they heard you say that blue light is associated with breast cancer.
Yes. So, I've written a very detailed chapter in an integrative medical textbook that I lay this all out. It's very scientific. But the point is there's a lot of publications about this. This is really not new. You can go online and, search artificial light at night and breast cancer and see studies from Harvard from a street lamp, that a street lamp outside of your window increased your odds of breast cancer. I mean, how about the light that's in your house? And so at least you have the ability to shut the light in your house off. And this is how understanding how to control your environment becomes so important.
So this is very well researched. I mean, you're referring to Harvard, but yet so many of us are unaware of it. And we just continue to, so to speak, love and be addicted to what is ultimately causing us to become very sick and die.
Well, we are.
I know that sounds so disturbing,
yeah.
But it's the truth.
Well, we are a tech-laden economy, a tech-laden society. We're all married to tech in some fashion, occupationally, personally, to keep tabs on family and friends, our job. And so this makes it a very hard toxin to shine light on, pun intended, right? In other words, it's very hard to see your blind spot because it's your blind spot. You need this. You need this to make living. You need this to make money. You need this to check on your mother. You need this to check on your kids. You need to know. So, but the question is, once you understand this mere fact, you know that there's no going back. You can't not unsee it. So now it's, how do I mitigate it, And I mean, I'm mitigating just us having this interview right now. I'm wearing a modular blue blocker. This is a daytime clip-on that blocks about 30 to 40% of the blue light that's coming in, because there's 4 times too much blue light in what the room we're sitting in compared to outside.
Right.
And at night, if I needed to, if the sun went down, I would switch, and now I can move to a clip-on that is designed for at night. And so here's a perfect slide that shows exactly what we're talking about. So on the bottom left, you can see that there, under the arrow, that's where the melanopsin receptor is sensitive, and all that blue light, which is in the compact fluorescence above our head, is present. Now, if it were night especially, that light would be destroying my ability to make melatonin. And then just by putting on this kind of amber-colored magnetic clip-on, you can see that on the right, it's actually cut out like a Pac-Man, chomped out all those frequencies that are suppressing melatonin. So I can now recreate night.
Yes.
Okay? And so that's the purpose of a blue blocking, glasses, or a blue blocking lens. And, I'm a big fan of Viva Rays in particular, because these glasses that I'm wearing, when I take this off, this lens here, because I wear a prescription, actually allows some UV light in when I go outside. Most lenses, when you're outside, don't let any UV. They block the UV. So again, that code that's coming wirelessly from the sun into my eyes, directly into my brain, when I just wear glasses to see what's in front of me, I'm blocking certain parts of that frequency information. And so I don't want to do that.
Right.
And so just wearing glasses. Now, typically when I'm outside, I'll do this. That's a full amount. But, if I wear these glasses by themselves, I can do that. So, I'm a big fan. If people are interested, they could go to vivarays.com and they could save 15% using the discount code Quantum Sleep. And that's probably the best investment anybody can make that's starting to endeavor on a journey of health that involves these biophysics, these light-based properties. Because if you cannot recreate night and day, all your hormones are based on that. All your neurotransmitters are based on that. Your immune system is programmed at night. Your hormones are made at night. Okay? Your memory is consolidated at night. You detoxify your brain at night. We know about something called the glymphatic system, similar to the lymphatic system. Basically, the brain drains out the toxins when you're sleeping, only if you're getting quality sleep. So, I like to refer to something called pillow time. Pillow time is not necessarily quality sleep. Just because you put your head down and 8 hours later you pick up your head, you may think that you sleep well, but you really don't know. And the reason I say this is in my sleep practice, when I was still doing traditional sleep medicine and sleep apnea, people with severe sleep apnea, half the time had no idea they had a problem. So, I always tell people, if you say you have a sleep problem, you're probably right. If you say you don't have a sleep problem, about half the time you're right.
Right.
So that means that you really don't know. If you think you sleep well, you don't know.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that we'd like to believe, well, I feel fine, but you'll feel fine until that moment where chronic disease strikes or you have a heart attack or something.
Yeah.
And then obviously things were not regenerating properly. You were not repairing. You were not recycling. You were not derusting.
So it's very important to pay attention to those signs that
if you have signs, then pay attention.
Crash.
Yes.
Any signs of not feeling optimally well can be a sign that your body needs some type of a support.
I'll even say you need to even do more than that, that if you don't have any signs, you need to be trying to evaluate your health and wellness in a way that's different from traditional allopathic medicine to see just where you are. And I look at this, from a mitochondrial standpoint. So the mitochondria is a part of your cell that makes energy.
Could I comment on
Yeah.
your last comment? Would you say it's important for each of us to be, in part, our own doctors?
You have to. When you recognize there's a huge lifestyle component, your doctor's not going to come home and live with you.
Yeah.
You have to understand this so you can make choices and realize the environment today will be very different from the way it looks in 10 years from now. So you're going to have to then adapt and mitigate new problems,
Yeah.
that don't exist today. New problems may exist tomorrow, and you need to be at least thinking in a different way that makes these new ideas come right to the surface, and you say, well, what do I do to avoid that problem?
Right. So kind of being like a detective, your own detective.
Yeah, you absolutely, you have to be. I wish it wasn't so, but health and wellness is a full-time job. So that means if you have a job or if you don't, you now have another job. And that's to pay attention and to do work. The world we live in, unfortunately, has so much toxicity that you're going to have to do something on a regular basis to address that so that you are at least, at the end of the day, net zero and not losing this war. And that's really how I see this energy accounting. You have the innate ability of your cells to make energy, and the lifestyle choices and the things that you do determine that. And then you have the toxicities that you allow. So you may say, well, I eat all organic food, and that's fantastic. That means you've cut down on this toxic burden. And it's just like an accountant, and we could pull up, we have some slides to show. If you think of this as an accounting problem, it's very simple. You have, this energy accounting system. So you have your income, that's your energy capacity, okay? And then you have to subtract out the toxic overload. And when you subtract that out, that's your net. That's your net, we'll call it vitality rather than use wellness, right? And that's going to determine how you really feel. And if you go to the next slide, you could see that, most of us judge vitality based on the superficial appearance. And if you just look at these top two pictures, if I said who's healthier, everybody's going to point to the left. That's the cover of the magazine version of what health is. Men's Health and Fitness is not going to have the dad bod on the right present. But if you look at the energy accounting, so while this person might have an overall energy capacity, let's say of 10, if they're exposed to tons of toxins, working out in the gym late at night under blue light being one of them, amongst other things.
Or drinking those drinks from the gym.
Yeah, whatever other junk that's in, the processed stuff that they're being sold. So his net vitality might only be a 3 when you do the subtraction.
Right.
Okay. Whereas the person on the right, which is certainly not going to be a model on Men's Health and Fitness, but maybe his energy is a little less, but he does more things right in his lifestyle, so his energy is going to have less toxic, overhead to subtract. So his net vitality could actually be greater.
Yeah. So name 10 things that create toxicity in the body.
So, most people think of foods, and so that's why, eating cleaner foods is what people think of. I'm going to tell you, it goes way beyond that. So now it's the light that you allow in your life. And so if you work, a night shift as a nurse, we know from the nurse health studies that night nurses have more problems with diabetes, cancer, heart disease. We know all kinds of problems are associated. So just being a night nurse, you've already taken on this toxic burden that you can't avoid.
Yeah, because of the lights.
Because of the light at night.
Wow.
Okay.
And that causes inflammation?
It causes inflammation, it causes damage, it causes cell death, it causes all kinds of problems, and it's worse than I could even get into without getting into lots of nitty-gritty details, but, I encourage any reader that wants to see, we could show a picture of the slide of...
Well, because I don't think a lot of people are convinced.
Yeah, so,
that
okay,
blue
so...
light is as bad as it really is, because it's so convenient. So please.
Well, actually, let's if we come off this slide, let me just... You can show the slide for the book, and let me just give one detail. Melanopsin, which is the blue light receptor, is coupled with vitamin A. And when blue light is constantly hitting that receptor, it actually creates intermediates of the vitamin A. And when blue light is constantly present and they don't get recycled, it creates toxic intermediates. These toxic intermediates can be then released in the blood and damage cells. And so this means that not only is the light that's hitting your part of your body that's exposed, this can travel through the blood and get to other parts of the body. This actually creates a mechanism whereby you can destroy parts of your body that aren't even blue light exposed at night. So just watching TV could affect your liver, even though your liver's covered. You say, well, it's always not always direct light. The lack of melatonin is going to have impacts on your hormones. We know that hormone deficiencies are going to lead to problems. We know that blue light is going to be associated and with sleeplessness and insomnia. This is associated with depression and anxiety. So it connects in so many horrific ways. We mentioned the cancer connection, which there's many published studies talking about artificial light at night and cancer. Melatonin is also an anti-cancer hormone. It has anti-cancer and immune stimulating properties. So when you subtract that from your life, there goes your immunity for trying to defeat cancer and other infections. So it's a very wicked web, and it happens slowly and insidiously. So it's not like, oh, boom, I have blue light and, I get this disease. It's the repetition, it's the chronicity.
How long does it take before
here's
have
the
a
bad
disease?
news. I'll use a very simple example. When you and I were kids, how old were you when you got dementia?
Me?
No, how old were people? Sorry, not. How old were people that you heard that got, Alzheimer's, dementia? How old were those people when we were kids?
I would say like 80-ish.
Late 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you a question. How old are people that get dementia now?
I don't know.
As young as 40. We have 50, 60, and 70-year-olds commonly
I'm
getting
not surprised
signs and diagnosed with dementia.
I heard that one of the populations that is getting diabetes the highest, at a highest rate, are people in their 20s and 30s. I don't know if that's true. You can
it's even worse.
Correct me,
Yeah,
please.
no, it's even worse than that because we have juvenile diabetes today that we never had in the history of man. And again, blue light stimulates AMPK pathways and stimulates glucose to be put into your blood. You don't have to eat any carbohydrates. The light itself can change your body. In fact,
why is it so accessible? Why aren't we educated more about this?
Because we love to consume it. People that are watching this are consuming blue light.
Right.
When you start to think of that, you say, well, how do we get rid of it? This is a much worse story than cigarettes. Cigarettes, people could say, oh, well, it's a toxin and we kind of knew about it and we know it causes, but people still smoke. But people don't need to smoke to do their job. But you need to be on a computer. You need to be on the phone. You need to be on. So this is how the lifestyle factor is. Smoking is a lifestyle, but it's not intimately connected to your livelihood. Mm-hmm. Our media, our life, our TVs, our screens are very intimately connected now.
Yeah. So we are going to come right back with the last portion of this interview. I am Ann Smollon. This is Come Together Conversations, and I am interviewing Dr. Joshua Rosenthal, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Ballas Associates, sales, service, and support for all your computer and PC networking needs. Whether it's wired or wireless, upgrades or repairs, backup or disaster recovery, we can provide the solutions to all your PC needs. No need to get frustrated. You know a guy. Just call Ballas Associates at 203-792-2300. That's 203-792-2300. Or visit them online at ballasassociates.com.
So we are back. This is Come Together Conversations with me, Ann Smollon, and I am interviewing Dr. Joshua Rosenthal. So, Dr. Rosenthal, we left off on this topic of blue light and what it unfortunately can do to optimal health and some of what is needed to regenerate what it has done and will continue to do to people. I was unaware of how much blue light and emotions had been affecting my health. And for many, many years, I was attempting to get better through all sorts of means, through nutrition, high intensity exercise, through meditation, eating all raw and organic foods, no cheeses, and I still wasn't getting better. I was feeling somewhat better, but then a friend of mine told me about you, and I began to use your protocols, going out every morning at sunrise, which for me was a very difficult thing because my energy levels were so low that when I first started doing the sun gazing at sunrise, I was forcing myself, dragging myself to get out of bed. And now my body automatically wakes up almost just a couple of minutes right before sunrise. And at 9:30 or 10 p.m., I am ready to go to sleep. And my energy level was so low, and I always considered myself a highly energetic person, but it had become so low that I was spending most of my time on the couch, and the only time that I was active was when I was working, and I would schedule things so that I could work and make the money, of course, that I needed to. Now, if my energy was at a, let's just say on a scale of 1 to 10, it was at maybe a 2 or less. It was really, really bad. It is a 9+ right now. I have tons of energy from not only doing the sun gazing at sunset, but at sunrise, but I also go out at sunset. And I have been going outside a lot and exposing my abdomen, which is where most of my weakest link is in my stomach from a lot of emotions throughout my life that I needed to work through, which I've worked through a lot of them. And the amazing thing is that when you begin to feel better, you gain so much clarity, and it makes doing the rest of the protocol that's necessary to regenerate much more reachable. You're able to figure out just logistically what it is that you need to do to feel better. So
When you know better, you do
I don't think
better.
I ever told you just how much I've been impacted by these things that you have shown me. And you have taken so much time. And no, this is not a commercial. This is real, people. You have taken so much time to help me with all of the details and been available every step of the way. So I am forever grateful for that. And now I can spend the full day with my grandson and not get tired and take him to the park and bring him under the sprinkler. And I have so much of my life back again. So sometimes when I think about those things that add to the toxicity level of a person's condition, I think about having a clear container of water and just dropping little bits of color in it with each thing that creates toxicity within our bodies, because it's those little things that we do that we don't really think make that much of a difference, that overall they add up and they make that crystal clear water very dirty. And it takes a long time. It's much better to do prevention than to do correction. So what else is it that adds to
Well, I think your story is not unlike all of our stories. As we enhance our wellness, our vitality, our energy levels, we see the world differently. We have seemingly more time, even though the time may actually be the same amount of time. But when you have that energy, you get more done. And then you tend to shoot a little higher and ask, what's the next step? And clients that I work with, I don't give them the 1,000-page manual and say, here it is, go for it. We start with 1 or 2 things, build, and then add, and because changing your lifestyle is a very challenging process. we're very much
But you know what's a lot more challenging?
being
To be-
sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, unfortunately, everyone's motivation for doing this work is different. Some people have to get really sick. I was benefited by my curiosity. My curiosity has kind of sparked a lot of this for me.
I
So
heard
I've,
in one of your podcasts, I'm sorry, I interrupted you,
No, go
but
ahead.
where you spoke about using the yellow glasses for 8 weeks, and then it just so happened that you were getting your yearly blood work done.
So I was wearing just nighttime blue blockers, the orange. These are daytime. But yeah, I noticed in a 3-month span of just wearing blue blockers in front of a laptop when I was doing the work at the end of the day.
Right.
So I wasn't using it the way I would recommend now. After 3 months, with no change in diet or exercise, I had lost about 6-7 pounds without trying. And then I checked my labs and saw that markers of inflammation had gone down. My hormones had been balanced and improved. And so you start saying, how is that possible? And that
Wow.
was the stimulus for me to say, well, wait a second. If I just put a orange, sheet over my glasses,
Right,
and that
right.
was that makes no sense. But that's physics. Physics is nonlinear. It's the butterfly effect. A small little flap here can create a tornado over there, and that's why it's so unbelievable. And I would just encourage your audience to remove their disbelief that this something what seems so simple, and there's a lot of layers to it, but on the surface it seems so simple that you're just saying, oh, just recreate night, and and a lot of great things will happen. And then you start to say, how do I dissect all these little micro routines in my life? How do I improve?
Right.
How do I increase the energy? How do I repair the parts of my body that make the energy, right? Because just removing the toxicity can leave you very vulnerable and exposed with low energy. And I think that's your story is
What does that mean?
Meaning, if you have really low ability to create energy and you eliminate all the toxicity in your life, which would be extraordinarily tough,
Right.
you'll feel like you gained a lot of your life back, but you're still at the bottom rung. Whereas if you improve your energy through a variety of these techniques, which will allow you to start to repair, and you double your energy and only improve half of the toxicity, because the amount to get rid of all of it,
Yeah.
you could actually have more vitality, more net vitality at the end of that story. And that's the way I see that. That, your ability to eliminate every single toxin is very, very challenging.
Okay.
But you do as much as you can at the moment that you can, and you build. But if you don't build the energetic capacity, which is really a mitochondrial story, which we didn't get into fully, but that's part of this
Can you
whole
get
idea.
into that a little bit, the mitochondria? Because I think that is really
The mitochondria
Cool.
are the transducer of the environmental signals. That's where your melatonin is made. That's where a lot of the energy production and biochemical decisions are made, and the instruction sets that run all the organ systems. So
I saw one of your slides at another presentation you did, and I'm sorry I interrupted you again.
it's okay.
I don't like to interrupt those fascinating sentences, but you had a slide where you showed like the mitochondria are almost like little batteries in each one of
Yes.
your cells.
Yeah, so you can just think of this as a battery. And think of it, everybody has bought more than one phone, and when you first buy it, it works at 100% when you charge it for days. And then all of a sudden it only lasts like 2 days, and then it only lasts a day, and then you're charging it 3 times a day.
Right.
The conditioning of the battery is a lot like mitochondrial function. When you lose the ability to hold and maintain a charge, and even worse is that when the battery says 100%, it says 100%, but it may only be 80% of its original life. Right? Our phones don't give us that information, but people who know about batteries know that as they age, they don't go to full capacity anymore, they go less. And as you break down, you lose that energy capacity. And the amazing news is that Doug Wallace, who's one of the national leaders in research of mitochondria, has shown that when the mitochondrial function decreases, that's when the symptoms of the disease appear. And he's done experiments with cells where he transfects cells with working mitochondria, and when the working mitochondria are replaced, the disease disappears.
Wow.
So it really means that when you increase this energy capacity, you can get rid of disease. And again, this is
So
part of
everybody knows how
the
to
story.
plug their phones in.
Yeah, so
But
how do you recondition your batteries?
How do you plug yourself
Right.
in?
Yeah, so
Whenever I ask people that, they say, by sleeping, I get powered by eating, and they never, once in a while they'll say, because I'm on this kick now, once in a while they'll say, by the sun.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Nature, the earth, the sun,
Okay.
these are the evolutionary factors that brought us here, through millions of years of evolution, or whatever you believe. The bottom line is we were designed to work in this environment. But that environment that, Homo sapiens was walking is not the same environment that we are living in and walking in today.
But we haven't really changed that much, right? From
Our bodies haven't changed, but our environment has
that's
been,
what
right.
I mean.
And
So our needs are the same.
yeah, I mean, and it gets back to Darwin, the idea of genetics. If genetics are true, then it takes generations for all these changes to happen. But we've seen in the last 50 years, less than a generation, changes that are exponential. And it's because the circumstances of our existence have changed dramatically, not our genes.
Right. Right.
And so then you're called to change. You're called to change your environment and understand what that means. And when I say that, the listeners here today will say, "Well, how do I change my environment?" And maybe you think going outside is a change. There's your outer environment. There's your inner environment. There's the people in your life. We're all affected by these different frequencies, the frequencies of light, the frequencies of emotions, of people, of interactions, all these things. Our thoughts are a frequency, our emotions are a frequency.
So something you once said to me when I was talking about part of my life and sickness, you said, always protect your health. And that hit me very hard, even though it seems so common sense. And I've been much more on that track lately. So we just have a couple of minutes left here. If we could bring up the slide that shows us Dr. Rosenthal's website and how people can reach him. Can you say that website, please?
Yeah, so my practice is quantumlifewellness.com. If people want to reach out, the email address is listed. I'm happy to share some of the most commonly recommended tools.
What is that email address?
That's qlwellness@protonmail.com.
qlwellness@protonmail.com.
And I practice very differently. I'm no longer in the insurance model, and I spend a lot of time, teaching and educating and dissecting lifestyle. And as you know from being involved a little bit, that
very much so. Me and my
the,
family.
the lifestyle dissection that's required is a very substantial piece of this, because the lifestyle you've lived up until this point that got you sick is the lifestyle that you have to change. If you do the same thing over and over and over again, that's the definition of insanity, right? So we all are called to do something different tomorrow than we did today. If today didn't give us the outcome we wanted, let's do it different.
So give it a try. Start incrementally, step by step. Don't be afraid to get those glasses to watch TV and reduce how much you are on your cell phone. And before you know it, you're going to be feeling a lot more energy going outdoors. Do what's natural, and it will bring you to a better state of mind and body. So this is Ann Smollon saying good night to you from Come Together Conversations, and thanking you, Dr. Rosenthal, for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Good night.